Hey, Sean here. I hope you're all having a great day. For today's video, I'll be giving a little review for a game called Adios, which is a walking simulator heavily driven by its story. Adios was a peculiar game experience. It's got a surprisingly strong and tight narrative, especially considering its short playtime. It really felt more akin to a film or a television episode than it did a game, and I'm perfectly fine with that. The relatively short experience absolutely crams in the backstory and builds two characters that you really do connect with by the end. The entire story takes place within one day, with you taking control of the farmer who wants to cut ties with the mob after working alongside them for the past 15 years or so. The story begins as your hitman friend arrives with a delivery to feed your pigs. It doesn't take much imagination as to what the hitman is feeding them, and it sets the tone pretty well. The farmer isn't at all fazed by this, it's clockwork as usual. While you dispose of the meat parcels, the dialogue and the chatter continues, revealing that the farmer wants out from this life. The hitman obviously doesn't want this, as there is obviously some bond between the two after all these years. With how much the dialogue and story progresses, it feels to me at least that the friendship is just business. The story beats are driven by the dialogue between the two, continuously revealing important character history and the personality of the farmer. The farmer has clearly led a long and fulfilling life with his wife and child, but old age has now come upon him. As we progress the game, it's revealed that the wife is now gone and his son has moved on with a family of his own. The backstory builds further as we continue to perform mundane tasks throughout the farm, which feel like a slice of the farmer's everyday life. It's purely all routine for him now, as the notepad of tasks suggest. But one thing is clear to the player, it's that he has formed a close bond with his animals, who he now knows in and out, and were more than likely the reason he's carried on alone for this long. The animals are all this farmer has now that his wife is no longer with him, which you learn more about as the game moves forward. Throughout this, the hitman tries his very best to dissuade the farmer from leaving this lifestyle, and that if he does so, would mean the end of him, literally. It's pretty clear that the hitman wants the farmer to stay in this side job. The question I asked myself, was it so the wheels keep on turning, or was it because of the friendship between the two? I found the story to be thought-provoking and often touching at times, especially when the story began to wrap up and the farmer began to attempt to reconnect one final time with his son. That particular part of the game was probably the most emotional and was the one thing the farmer couldn't control. I think that makes it all the more emotional, and the topic of reconnecting with family, even when it might seem too late, is something that will resonate with a lot of people. The farmer has clearly had a lot of time to contemplate and reconcile with his past mistakes, and while the ending is very dark, it feels like this was his decision and plan all along. He goes out on his own terms. I think the worst thing the story could have done here would have been to have backtracked and to have the farmer stay employed, and I'm glad this wasn't the case. The game is played out through mundane tasks, which see you milk the goats, feed your horse, and shovel manure. While these tasks seem pretty boring, it's the dialogue sprinkled throughout that which makes these tasks important. We're experiencing this character through a single day in his life. We go from task to task while also visiting other aspects of the farmer's life, such as his hobbies like repairing vintage vending machines, fishing, or trying to repair his car with his would-be hitman. These tasks all seem pretty boring when you say them out loud, but I think gameplay comes second to the story in this game. I'd say as a rule, this would be frowned upon in most games, but this is a game that is heavily driven by its narrative. The voice acting is very well done and felt natural between the characters. In certain games you can tell the dialogue is recorded separately and can feel awkward at times, but that didn't seem to be the case here. The ambient soundtrack is great. The ambient sounds that you hear throughout the game really make the farm come alive and feel lived in. You can hear the sound of the wind rushing through the trees and the grass, the birds tweeting and the pigs grunting. It all feels incredibly peaceful considering the overhanging threat. I'm kinda glad there isn't a score which would overpower these ambient sounds, which I think were pretty important to the story. It's a testament to how good the narrative in this game really is. A lot of these scores can feel manipulative to emotions and made to make you feel a certain way. The art style reminded me a lot of the old Telltale games like The Walking Dead, with its vibrant colours that make use of its autumn setting. It's heavily stylized and continues to highlight its setting as the day progresses on, what with this heavy use of the colour orange. The game takes place during the season which marks the passing of summer into winter, a season which would more than likely bring the end of the farming season. I can't help but think that plays somewhat into the theme of the farmer's life coming to an end. I couldn't imagine this game taking place in summer or any other season for that matter. While the character models and some of the textures aren't necessarily the prettiest and probably could have done with a more realistic approach, it does the job it needs to, and that is to offer a place in which a powerful story could be told. It's really difficult to suggest improvements here, but I think I would have enjoyed hearing some more of the history between the farmer and the hitman, if only to be able to relate more to why the hitman has to kill the farmer for leaving the mob. It's pretty clear that the farmer meant no ill will towards the mob, and I felt that by killing the farmer it would have probably brought more attention to them than by just leaving him alone. There's such an emphasis throughout that the farmer is old at this point and cannot carry on with the farm. I was a little surprised there wouldn't be more of an exploration of that path. Overall, I've more than enjoyed my experience here. I was left with a very thought-provoking ending that I've been mulling over for some time after completion. It's honestly surprising to me because the game is incredibly short compared to other games in the walking simulator genre. It's definitely an experience that felt like I was playing through an episode of television at more than a few points, and perhaps that is why I felt this game came together so well. The dialogue felt very natural to me and would often go off on tangents, where the farmer would sprinkle in his experiences or knowledge like a real conversation would. This is definitely not a game for everyone. It's mature, thought-provoking, and often dark at times. I feel that people who enjoy dialogue-driven drama will feel right at home here, even if it isn't the most visually striking game. Even if it might feel a little rough around the edges visually, the art style is one that has stood the test of time, what with the Telltale games for example. Because of its short playtime of around 1 to 2 hours, I'll more than likely return to experience this slice of life in future. For what it is, I'd give this game a 7.5. It's a narrative-driven walking simulator. If you're not into either of those things, then it's definitely not for you, and that's perfectly fine. But if you are, then you'll find something deeply moving about facing your own mortality and sticking with your decisions, and that will stay with you for a long time after this game has ended. Thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you've played this game yet. I'll see you all soon. Take care.